Mr. Groundhog Wants the Day Off. Written by Stemper Vojat. Illustrated by Olga Levitskiy. "I will not do Groundhog Day anymore," said Mr. Groundhog. "I'm tired of everyone getting mad at me. They see my shadow and blame me for 6 more weeks of winter. I quit." Mr. Groundhog stood next to the hole in the ground where he lived in the park. Everyone would wait there to see him on Groundhog Day. He jogged around the park to help him think. He stopped fast when he saw he was nose to nose with Mrs. Rabbit. "Oh, hello, Mrs. Rabbit," said Mr. Groundhog. Mrs. Rabbit smiled. "Will you do Groundhog Day for me this year?" asked Mr. Groundhog. "I'm sorry, I can't. I'm much too busy getting ready for Easter. I have eggs to color, and I must practice the bunny hop to lead the parade. But I have something for you." Mrs. Rabbit lifted the lid of a trunk. She pulled out a vest. "This was my grandfather's special occasion vest. You would look very nice wearing this on Groundhog Day." "Thank you," said Mr. Groundhog. He slipped the vest on and continued his walk. Then he met Mr. Turtle. "Hi, Mr. Turtle. Would you mind doing Groundhog Day for me?" asked Mr. Groundhog. "All you have to do is come out and greet the crowd of people." "I would, but I can't fit into that small opening of your home. My shell will get stuck," explained Mr. Turtle. "But I have something for you." Mr. Groundhog followed Mr. Turtle to a cluster of bushes. Mr. Turtle reached in and lifted out a hat. "This is my holiday hat. I want you to wear it on Groundhog Day," said Mr. Turtle. "Thank you," Mr. Groundhog said as he put on the hat. Next, he saw Mrs. Squirrel. "Mrs. Squirrel, will you do Groundhog Day for me?" "I'm really sorry, but I would be too afraid to go down into the dark hole to get to your home." "But I have something for you," said Mrs. Squirrel. She reached up and broke some branches off a tree. "You can use one of these for a cane. It will look nice with your vest and hat." "Thank you," said Mr. Groundhog, as he hooked the branch around his arm. As Mr. Groundhog walked back home, he met Mrs. Raccoon. "Mr. Groundhog, you look very handsome." "I have something for you," said Mrs. Raccoon. She took a piece of ribbon off her head and tied it around Mr. Groundhog's neck. "Thank you," said Mr. Groundhog. The next morning, sunlight woke up the sleeping groundhog. Mr. Groundhog got up and hurried into his outfit. With all of his courage, he reached up and somersaulted out of the hole. He saw his shadow somersault along with him. Then Mr. Groundhog tipped his hat to the crowd. His shadow tipped its hat too. The band began to play. Mr. Groundhog reached out his arms and began to dance. His shadow danced too. Mr. Turtle looked at the ground and saw that he had a shadow. He began to dance. His shadow danced too. Mrs. Squirrel joined in. Soon, everyone was dancing. "I never knew how much fun a shadow could be," said Mrs. Squirrel. "I'm looking forward to next Groundhog Day." Mr. Groundhog was happy. He smiled at his shadow and said, "Thank you, my friend. I'll see you again the next sunny day." Happy Groundhog's Day! Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe. Want to check out the last story we read? Here's the link. Do you have a favorite book that you want read aloud? Leave it in the comments below.